Hi, thank you for watching Dig into China. I'm Dong Shong. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Today, I would like to discuss the topic of China's currency, the renminbi replacing the US dollar. Let's explore the possibility of China's renminbi taking over the US dollar as the dominant global currency. In late April, the Chinese state media revealed that Argentina would be using renminbi instead of the widely accepted US dollar to pay for imports from China. This move follows another country's decision to make the same shift within the last month, signaling a potential acceleration of the de-dollarization process. As individuals in the economic and investment industry, how should we analyze and interpret this significant development? Here are my takes for your reference. China has been engaged in currency swaps or periodic exchanges with other nations for a significant amount of time. Periodic exchanges entail the mutual exchange of currencies between trading partners within a fixed quota, with any excess amounts being returned. Argentina's recent decision to use renminbi for Chinese imports does not suggest that the renminbi is poised to replace the US dollar as a hard currency. Rather, it represents a limited expansion of renminbi use. The arrangement involves the exchange of equal value, same term, and consistent interest rate calculation methods between the central banks of two countries based on the agreed exchange rate. China has entered into currency swap agreements with many countries and regions, including the European Central Bank. Another point to consider is that the agreement signed between China and Argentina only pertains to using each other's currency for trade and reserving each other's currency as foreign exchange. It is not an indication that the renminbi will replace the US dollar as the dominant global currency. The fact that the trade between Argentina and China is settled in renminbi does not automatically lead to a shift away from the US dollar. In fact, China has a trade surplus with Argentina, while Argentina has a trade deficit. This means that when the two countries engage in currency exchange or use others' currency for settlement, China will always be the party with a surplus and receive either Argentine currency or renminbi in return. If Argentina settles trade with China using the renminbi, China will receive a significant amount of renminbi. But this does not benefit China because the renminbi will eventually flow back to China and it cannot be used to buy goods outside of China. This is because China has a trade surplus with most countries, meaning that if trade is settled in renminbi, China is still receiving renminbi without outputting it. In contrast, the US has a trade deficit with most countries and gives dollars to other countries, which are then kept as foreign exchange and used to purchase goods from other countries. This fundamental difference in trade flows means that the renminbi replacing the US dollar as the dominant global currency is unlikely in the short to medium term. Thirdly, there are some savvy bureaucrats within the CCP who view currency exchange as a symbol of friendship. However, the use of renminbi for trade with Argentina is limited to a narrow range of commodities and is temporary. If Argentina were to expand the use of renminbi to all commodities, China would be unable to sustain it, as the currency that flows back would always be the renminbi. Due to China's trade surplus, Argentina will not keep renminbi, and if the scale of renminbi issuance is too large, it could impact the domestic market. While the technical bureaucrats in China are aware of this risk, their goal is to expand the internationalization of the renminbi, and they are willing to bear the temporary negative effects to encourage more people to use the renminbi. Currently, Beijing is not pursuing the goal of renminbi dominance, but rather cultivating the habit of using renminbi internationally within the CCP system. China's primary focus for achieving renminbi internationalization is to attract global investors to purchase renminbi-denominated bonds, which could serve as a potential breakthrough. While the current conditions do not allow for free buying and selling of renminbi, these bonds can be traded within certain market scopes, and China has been gradually expanding renminbi bond internationalization from bases in Hong Kong and Luxembourg. However, this is still a far cry from renminbi replacing the US dollar, as the currency only has a usage quota of 2% in the SWIFT system, placing it the fifth behind the US dollar, euro, British pound, and the Japanese yen. Therefore, the idea of renminbi replacing the US dollar as an international currency remains a distant possibility. It is crucial to grasp the essence behind this news event. In the fifth point, it is noted that China's request for Argentina to settle in renminbi is a risky approach. Although Xi Jinping may have limited knowledge, some of his advisors are knowledgeable but radical in their approach. For example, the Belt and Road Initiative proposed by one such advisor is a clever and idealistic concept aimed at helping other countries build infrastructure such as a sports stadium, government buildings, and high-speed railways. China would lend money to these countries, and although it is called a dollar loan, it is essentially a loan in the form of goods and labor, but priced in dollars. When the loan is repaid, it is in dollars, allowing China to utilize domestic surplus labor and excess capacity while earning back dollars. However, this model is risky because it relies on other countries accepting such an absurd collaboration. China would use expensive products and labor and let the borrowing country shoulder the debt. If the borrowing country has enough money, why wouldn't they invest in their own development or go to Western countries? China would argue that the borrowing country cannot come up with that much money. Hence, China would pay for everything. Underdeveloped countries may sign Belt and Road agreements with China out of desperation, only to end up burdened with massive debt. The Belt and Road Initiative was intended to help China use its excess capacity and surplus labor, but it has not been successful in achieving this goal. Instead, China itself has fallen into a debt trap due to the initiative. However, the countries that have borrowed from China are not necessarily the losers in this situation. Some European countries, for example, have refused to pay back their loans or make a profit for China. Therefore, the Belt and Road Initiative has not achieved its intended purpose, and China has ended up in a debt trap. Accelerating the internationalization of the renminbi to replace the US dollar poses two main risks for Xi Jinping. First, as previously mentioned, China has a significant trade surplus, and settling this surplus in renminbi results in the currency flowing back to China rather than circulating abroad, which undermines the goal of internationalizing the renminbi. However, as China has the ability to print its own currency, there seems to be little point in accumulating such large amounts of renminbi. Thus, bringing renminbi back from abroad is counterproductive to the objective of renminbi internationalization. The second reason why Xi Jinping's push for renminbi internationalization is risky is that China's trade settlement model using renminbi will ultimately decrease its ability to generate a surplus. If other countries settle their trade with China in renminbi, it will result in an increase in China's trade surplus with these countries. Thus, in turn, will compel China to decrease renminbi surplus, which could weaken the foundation of the renminbi exchange rate. Currently, the renminbi exchange rate is pegged to a basket of currencies with the US dollar being the primary one. Any decrease in China's surplus and the US dollar would potentially harm the foundation of the renminbi exchange rate and threaten its stability. To successfully internationalize the renminbi, the CCP should adopt a strategy similar to that of the US. First, they must focus on strengthening China's economy. Second, they should allow the renminbi to be freely convertible and subject to market forces. Finally, they must establish a robust regulatory framework similar to the US Federal Reserve to maintain the stability of the currency's value. This is the appropriate path towards renminbi internationalization. China is pursuing a precarious path that is likely to lead to failure, and the government's actions are self-deceiving. The issue of the free exchange of renminbi remains unresolved, and Beijing continues to manipulate the exchange rate artificially, at times even resorting to domestic bullying to control the renminbi's value. However, China aims to leverage this manipulation to bully other countries, particularly those in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. But these countries are not easily fooled and are unlikely to repay their debt if they are unable to do so. This is the reality. In its pursuit of expanding the renminbi's internationalization, the CCP's reluctance to abandon its politicizing and authoritarianism is setting this endeavor up to inevitable failure. While China can coerce impoverished nations into settling their trade in renminbi, this will ultimately resemble the Belt and Road Initiative's outcome, where these countries will default on their debt and import the debt risks back into China. Thus, China is not genuinely committed to promoting the renminbi's internationalization in the correct manner, and by taking the wrong approach, it is only exposing itself to more significant risks that will far surpass the dangers brought on by the Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.